Good evening, Tracy and San Juan County residents. I'm your host, Raj Singh, and I have my co-host with me, Gurtej Jadwal, today, along with me, and we are having such a wonderful person on our show running for Congressional District 10 for California, Mr. Ted House. Gurtej, please introduce yourself and let's give a time to Mr. Ted as well.
Oh, thank you very much. So I'm Gurtej, your co-host. Thank you very much, Raj. And we have an honor of having Mr. Ted House today, the Congressional District 10. So I would request Mr. Ted to please introduce him.
Hey, good evening, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening. Obviously, Dr. Ted Howes, local veterinarian and 10th District congressional candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Ted. And I think we can start our show kind of getting more into that Ted's running for Congress for District 10. What are your main or top priorities that you would like to highlight?
Sure, and I'll get there. But first, I want to say, again, thank you for having us this evening. We have our campaign has had a tremendous relationship with the Sikh community in the Turlock and Modesto area. I'm not aware if you know that through our Operation Compassion, where we've served a lot of meals and given away a lot of boxed foods. We've done that through Punjab Express and Turlock and several other businesses in the community, and it's just a wonderful community, and we're glad to have partners helping us. Growing up here in the Valley, I think is the best experience for, really knowing what's important here. I grew up just south of the Fresno area. Yeah, I went to the University of California at Davis, where I did both my undergraduate work and veterinary school. Ended up settling first in Ceres and then in Turlock, and spent. I don't know if that's at my end or your guys'. Sorry.
That's good. That's your window. Can you mute yourself, please?
Okay. Okay. Sorry, guys. So, I've worked the last 26, going on 27 years as a large animal veterinarian here in the Valley, immersed in agriculture every day. I've also, coached thousands of young people as a sports coach, especially at the high school level in football. I've been involved in my community as a planning commissioner in Turlock and also as a city council member. So kind of a broad range of experience to get you involved in a little bit of everything. I think, we've knocked on close to 100,000 doors, maybe more by this point in this election. And, rather than talking about my issues, I'd love to touch on what we're hearing from residents in the Valley that are their issues. And, right now, the top things that we're hearing from everybody, it seems like they're asking us about public safety, defunding the police, where we stand on that. They ask consistently about health care. It's such an important issue, I think, to every single Valley family. We're asked about homelessness. How are we going to return to quality of life in the Valley with everything that's going on? Water, of course, is always a big concern here in the Valley. And I mean, those are really the top issues that we get all the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ted. So you touched the key points. So I would want to request you, so please shed some light, or what's your point of view on public safety and safety of our law enforcement officers?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you that, number one, I have a great relationship with law enforcement. I'm a former firefighter. I worked very close with members of law enforcement at many accident scenes. I mean, I know the vast majority of our officers, 99% of them, are just absolutely great people. They work hard. Their community is in their heart every single day, and they try to do good things. And so I support law enforcement 100%. Now, with that said, of course, we all realize there's things that we can do to improve the quality of service of any business, any government agency. And I think this call to defund the police is an absolute disaster, because if anything, we need more funding for better training. I mean, when you do a job where you have to make split-second decisions that are life and death, you can have 25 good years of service in one bad 5-minute period of time. And training is just crucial to people in public safety. And so as a former city council member, I know when you talk about defunding any agency in government, the first thing that they want to do is offer golden parachutes to experienced employees, try to cut the high cost positions out of departments. And then every head of a department wants to cut training expenses. And so if you get rid of experienced officers and eliminate money from training budgets, what we're going to have at the end of this defund the police are more incidents going bad, not fewer. So I'm firmly on the side of law enforcement and fully on the side of funding more training, more body cameras, more accountability for actions. And for those very small number of bad actors, of course, we should hold them accountable and prosecute them if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Ted, for putting some light on your point of view for the public safety and law enforcement. So I wanted to actually jump into now the next part of our question for this interview about the healthcare. So can you tell us what exactly, when we talk about the issues that you will have getting it from the residents, what about the healthcare side? What topics are we talking about here? Sure.
Well, I don't know how much background you guys know. I have personal experience with the issue of healthcare in our country. My late wife, we struggled with an insurance company for 3 years trying to get her the testing she needed. And, we all want to believe in our doctors and our health insurance companies that they're all trying to do the right things. Her doctors were really trying. It was a health insurance company that continued to deny testing because it said she was too young and too healthy to have a heart condition. That's, of course, until she dropped dead during a 5-mile fun run with my youngest son running with her. And it's one of the reasons I got involved in this, because I vowed that was a call to action to take on the corporate healthcare lobby, health insurance, and make sure that no other family had to go through the type of tragedy that my family went through. So I'm a firm believer everybody should have access to affordable healthcare, and that we should fight to get costs down. And there's multiple ways we can do that. I'm a huge believer in open competition, opening up health insurance across state lines, posting prices, telemedicine. There's a lot of things that we can help do to drive prices down for people with private health insurance. And I believe that we should save the private health insurance industry. We should not take that non-taxable benefit away from 100 million Americans. People who go to work at their jobs, they receive that from their employer. That's a non-taxed benefit. If we get rid, as my opponent wants to, all private health insurance, you have almost a third of Americans that lose their health insurance that they're receiving from their employer, that they're now going to have to pay a tax to receive. And if you've ever traveled around the world and seen how government-run healthcare works, it's not always the best system to control costs. They have to limit services. And I like to tell people, if you can imagine going to the DMV for your health services, I don't think any of us are ever happy when we walk in the DMV. So I think we have to find a system that we make the private health insurance model more affordable. And then we have to find a way, and I call it Medicare for some, a way to provide health care to those who just simply can't afford it, because I do believe everybody should have access. And for me, I would like to see the federal government block grant funds to states and allow the states to decide how they're going to provide that health care. Now, myself, I grew up in a family that, we didn't have a lot of means. We went to county hospitals. I would like to see the county hospital system reinstituted. And I think there's a way to do that. Especially, a lot of my doctor friends, a lot of young people I know going to medical school, taxpayers subsidize that. It would be great that we required that everybody who came out of a publicly funded university, a publicly funded university where taxpayers are subsidizing education, have to go do a 2-year internship in a county hospital. Talk about see every medical condition under the sun and make better doctors. But we can also provide that health care to people who just can't afford it or don't have access to it in any other means. So I think there are absolutely a lot of ways as a country we could approach this issue, but we've got to start having legitimate conversations instead of, partisan fights over either, Medicare for all for everyone, kill every other health insurance, or no, we're not going to do anything. And I think that we need to get moderate people with common sense to find a real answer. And then lastly, within that realm, I've also vowed, listen, anybody with a pre-existing condition should not be locked out of being able to get health insurance or medical care. So I stand 100% behind covering people with pre-existing conditions. I know my opponent just recently sent out a mailer. He's trying to scare Granny, and he's trying to scare anybody with a health condition that we won't cover those things. I want to make sure everybody knows I absolutely stand behind covering pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, no, Dr. Ted, we are sorry about the untimely loss, and thank you very much for sharing your point of view on the healthcare. So moving along to the farming sector, so one job out of 3 jobs in our Central Valley that depends on farming. And water, that is the main essential for our farmers. And with our 20th century infrastructure, our delta, our levee, and Southern California, depending on water from that is transferred from here. So what is your vision towards water in the Central Valley?
It's simple. We have to build more water storage. And the reality is, when you're choosing your elected officials, you can choose between one side that is firmly entrenched with the Sierra Club environmentalists who don't want us to do anything that would create more water storage in the state, or you can come over with those of us who think it's absolutely one of the biggest issues of our time in the valley, building more dams, storing more water, because let's face it, rainfall here in the valley is a hit and miss proposition. We get 50% of our years are wet years if we're lucky, or more can be dry years. So we've got to start storing that water. My opponent talks a big game. He talks about being for water. There was recently an article penned by Ken Calvert, a congressman down in Southern California, kind of panning our California Democrats Josh Harder and TJ Cox were both among them, that killed amendments that would have added, I believe it was $100 million or more. You'd have to check that figure to go towards raising Shasta Dam and storing more water. So, you need to elect people that actions match the rhetoric. And myself, I am 100% for building more water storage. We absolutely have to have it. My opponent tells you he is, and then when the chips are down, he doesn't show up to make it happen. So, water storage is a massive issue. I work in agriculture every day and understand that. And let's get with getting it done, and voting for Ted Howes is a vote for more water storage in California.
All right. Thank you, Ted, for sharing your thoughts on this topic on the farming side of the industry. And I think just to kind of keep this more engaging, right? So out of blue, I wanted to kind of know about, so we have a farming land here, and that's the jobs are here. Are you thinking to bring more other sectors here? What's your stand on that, along with farming?
Yeah, I actually believe that our valley is kind of the Goldilocks zone for jobs, right? We have a little bit of everything. That's one of the things I find amazing about Tracy. Even though I'm a Turlock guy, Tracy is not only ag land, but it's also a distribution hub. So much traffic in and out of the Bay Area and from the Delta and the shipping. And we see that in Patterson now, obviously, with all the stuff with Amazon. Crow's Landing Naval Air Station is an absolute opportunity for an area to bring more jobs that we can ship products all over the world. Now, my background, if you go look at the city of Turlock, I was the financial architect of what is the Turlock Regional Industrial Park. We took redevelopment dollars before the state of California stole them from all cities. And we went in and we pre-plumbed water, sewer, power, improved the roads. We're building high-tech agricultural manufacturing. And this is why I say we're kind of the Goldilocks zone, because we can do a little bit of everything really well. We have TID, MID power. There's areas within the 10th district that we're not under the thumb of PG&E. We can produce a lot of products really cheaply. And we still have plenty of water coming down, into TID and MID. So we just have the opportunity. Agriculture is our lifeblood, but it's just the start. as we can produce these high-tech and agricultural products, we can then utilize other areas in the district to ship these all over the world. So my goal would be to sit down with city leaders in every community and figure out how do we leverage the strengths of each community. What Turlock can do well, maybe Tracy has something else that they do really well. They have the land for it. They have the zoning for it. How do we work together to integrate all those things and make the whole district stronger? And in that vein, I'm very proud. I've built just tremendous relationships with the leaders in almost every single community, endorsed by, Mayor Rickman in Tracy, Mayor Bublak in Turlock, Mayor Brandvold in Modesto, Mayor Cantu in Manteca. I mean, the list is long. Almost every single mayor in the district's endorsed me because they see that I have the background of building and bringing jobs, and they want to work with Ted Howes as their next member of Congress. And we've crossed, bipartisan lines, working with other members of opposite parties here in the Valley. Just recently we took a tour of affordable housing in Manteca, and we did that with members of every party that want to come together and work well once we're elected to be able to get things done for the Valley. So do I want to bring jobs? Absolutely. Do I have an idea of how to do it? You better believe it. I've done it before in Turlock, and it's about working together with every community to leverage our strengths.
Thank you, Dr. Ted. So you touched that farming, that is the main breadwinner for the Central Valley. With that, the high-tech farming, or you mentioned that the logistics, so those are the essential parts. So the other thing that I kind of find is approximately 100,000 people or individuals, they have to travel to Bay Area on the daily basis for the job opportunities there. So from the schooling perspective, so what is your vision towards our educational aspect? So what would be the approach of Central Valley so that we have a workforce that would attract the job opportunities more here in the Central Valley?
Yeah, well, so, I'll start off by saying I'm a big proponent of school choice. There's great schools in the Valley, and there's not so great schools. I believe that education should be handled at the local level by local school boards who know their district, know what's valued, and more importantly, know what's needed in their community, right? I just recently had a big employer contacting us. They needed fabricators and welders that could deal with stainless steel. That it's a high-paying area. They're having difficulty finding people who could do it. This feeds into more, school systems like Denair, where they have a strong agricultural strong agricultural background, and they can put people through them and train them. That's a school district that may draw students from all over if they know that they're helping teach kids jobs that are in demand. So I just think parents ought to be able to send their children to the school district they want to send them to and have that choice. And if they have a failing school district that's in their backyard, they can pick their kids up and send them to charter school or private school, right? I think that's crucial to number one. And competition, of course, makes everybody compete better, because failing models fold in the face of competition. And I know a lot of great teachers who would love to see changes happening in their school district, but it's just like a slow grind of a wheel to make change. So that's number one. I support school choice. And I already talked about, I think schools should be controlled at a local level, not by Washington, D.C. Programs shouldn't be handed down that they have to run. I have teachers tell me all the time, especially with the state of California, that they have so many mandated things that they now have to do in their classroom that they don't have time to teach the 3 R's, right? That it's just becoming a competition with what they're being forced to handle in schools. So I'd like to see that pulled back out of the school system and allow our schools to compete. Now, we have some great colleges here in the district. Stanislaus State, tremendous school. But Modesto Junior College, great school, right? We're turning out some really terrific people from college. The problem is we don't have the jobs. They graduate and they end up wanting to go elsewhere. So it circles back to building the jobs we need here in the Valley so that people will stay. And I will tell you, I have that commuter experience because as a coach at the high school level, I've had a lot of players that get up in the morning, come to school. Their mom and dads are gone already, headed over the hill for work. They come home from practice at night. Mom and dad aren't home yet. I've had a lot of my players through the years that we've helped feed because they weren't going to have any dinner when they got home at night. A big push for me for developing the jobs that we did in Turlock was so that more parents could be closer to home. They could come and go from work, gets more traffic off the streets, but they're really there for their family, core family, stronger students, ultimately better achievement down the road. And that's one of the things. Jobs have to go hand in hand with schooling, and it'll be one of my top priorities.
And just a follow-up question on that, Mr. Ted, as well. We talked about Stanlis University on the Stanlis County. In the San Joaquin County, what I heard last time, there was some talks about opening a new CSU in the Stockton area, but we have Tracy and Modesto close by, neighboring city each other, and we have such a rather rapid pace growing community. And what do you think about any idea, any thoughts about that might be imperative to have in this area as well in order to attract more jobs? Because what I believe and kind of see logically, the IT companies or any companies, they would want it to open up or invest into the areas where they have a workforce, and the workforce is being generated through the universities. And if they don't see them in the pipeline, it just kind of not go for them, kind of green signal for them. Hey, we probably don't want to get into this. So what are your thoughts or some ideas towards this Tracy and Mountain House area?
Yeah, I actually think we need another CSU here because, Stanislaus always seems to be full. I'm a graduate at UC Davis, and UC Davis had the reputation of being the ag school back in the 80s when I attended. And I liked that because we knew kind of what you stood for when you were going there. The programs were tailored to young people who really wanted to heavily be involved in agriculture. And thank goodness, because we have all the great wines in California that we have because of a lot of the people that came through the enology department at UC Davis. I'd like to see us build more CSUs and have them kind of tailored towards regionally what are, a big demand. So a CSU in this area that focuses heavily on computer engineering, computer science, the trades that our valley right here are known for, I think would be helpful. And I disagree with the guys in Silicon Valley who say, well, there's no workforce here to justify building things because their workforce is coming from over here. We have great people here in the valley to do these jobs. It's convincing them that they need to be here and let their workforce have better access to where they're going to work. Now, I think that one of the byproducts of COVID, if there's any positives, is that we're seeing that people can be very effective at working remotely. So I think we may see a push toward more regional centers where people can work remotely from home and they have a local area that they can regionally tap into when they need to come in, to check in for work or whatever. I think the whole argument about, well, there's nobody over here that can do these jobs is an argument that they're going to have they're lost by the time we get done with COVID. So I'm hoping that we can, number one, get those jobs over here so that number two, we can get the traffic off the roads, because there's no way we can ever build enough trains or highway lanes to continue to push a workforce over this hill. It won't happen.
Okay.
Thank you very
for
much.
sharing your idea and thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Ted. Appreciate you for touching that aspect. So you just briefly touched the COVID. So from that perspective, Dr. Ted, quarter of the population that is homeless in the country lives in California. And this COVID thing, this will push some of them that are on the verge towards the homelessness. So How do you see the future of Central Valley in the homeless aspect?
Well, I think homelessness is a very tricky issue because there's different populations within what we defined as homeless. And I think we really have to take a hard look at what those are. So from my experience while on the Turlock City Council, we had a huge homelessness explosion because I was on from 2006 through 10 when we went through the big economic meltdown. And so we had a big spike in homelessness at that time. So the difficulty lies in, okay, who are truly homeless because they've just lost a job they've lost their home, the whole family's affected. And who is what falls into the second category, not homeless, but rather criminally vagrant. And there are so many faith-based programs and community programs that help truly homeless people. And they always, when talking to them back then, they always had positions open for people seeking help, and they weren't being used because the criminally vagrant don't want to use the services where they're required to come in and be clean and sober and a job program. Or so consequently, there was plenty of room for people who suddenly found themselves homeless due to those life conditions. The tougher issue is the criminally vagrant. How do we deal with them? And right now, as a society, we're doing a very poor job because we are just investing state, federal, local monies in applying a Band-Aid, feeding and housing people that for one reason or another are making some very poor life decisions. So for me, I think handling homelessness is a multi-step process. Number one, we have to go back to enforcing quality of life laws. We have to say, you cannot sleep in the doorway of businesses at night. You cannot urinate and defecate, and you can't harass people in their businesses and their neighborhoods. You can't arrest your way out of homelessness, and I'm not advocating that, but we do have to be able to arrest people and hold them accountable for breaking our laws and making our communities less safe. So that's the quality of life aspect. We have to empower our law enforcement to handle these people that are breaking our laws. Secondly, once those people are arrested, and we all know police officers, they know these individuals usually on a first name basis. They're multiple offenders, and we have to start taking those people and pushing them into curing the real problem, which is drug addiction, alcoholism, mental health issues. That is where the money, to me, that should be invested, is rather than just feeding and housing. It should be invested in treating the underlying causes and trying to get people who are criminally vagrant back to being productive members of society. So how would I do that? I would invest those federal monies into diversionary programs. Once you're arrested, you get a choice. Hey, you can stay in jail, or you can go into drug treatment, alcohol treatment, mental health therapy. And once somebody completes a diversion program and they come out, we don't just kick them back to the streets. We put them into a transitional housing program, and then we get them involved in a job training program. So ultimately, we take somebody who's willing to, put themselves in a better position through completing diversionary therapy. We'll help them become productive members of society. Again, it's biblical. Instead of just giving them a fish, we're going to teach them to fish. Then once they complete all that, we stick with them in transitional housing until they can get out of it. And we assign case officers to them to check in and make sure that they're transitioning well. It's part of giving everybody a second chance if they're willing to, pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. I absolutely believe that that's the solution. Enforcing quality of life laws, giving people options to get into diversionary therapy, and then helping them transition back into society. And I think we do that with the federal and state monies right now that we're essentially just burning. We're just burning by feeding and housing. So, in my experience, when we did that at a certain level in the city of Turlock, we helped more people and we trimmed the number of homeless over time. And I think that's the model that we should pursue here in the Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Ted, for touching on the homeless side of the house. And I'm going to bring it to the next part, which is the follow-up from the last one regarding COVID for our district overall. What are your idea, or what's your vision, or how are you planning on addressing this issue? And how do you see what are the complications and how you're planning on solving those?
Sure. Well, I believe, first of all, when we win this race, we're not going to be sworn in until January 2021. And, I'm hoping that we have a pretty good handle on COVID by then, hopefully either a vaccine out or, a natural immunity through herd immunity built up. I think the focus for us really has to be on protecting susceptible populations. We know COVID hits people who are elderly and have some other type of underlying condition very hard. My own parents, we talk all the time about keeping them out of the public eye too much. And if they need help with us help getting groceries or whatever, we'll do that. I think we have to somewhat as a society take responsibility for ourselves with social distancing. Now, with that said, for people who are young and healthy and, they choose not to fear what the ramifications, either rightly or wrongly, they choose not to fear it, we need to allow businesses to open back up. I mean, if you can walk into a Walmart with all the people in there, I think you should be able to go sit down and have dinner in a restaurant if that's your choice. I think we get into a fight between people who want to take one side or the other. Hey, COVID isn't real. Oh, yes, COVID will kill everybody, right? We both know friends like that. And I think what we lose, again, is a perspective about there are pretty common sense solutions that we could live with in the short term. And for me, one of those would be, listen, we're going to set aside 2 days a week where, people who are fearful and believe everybody should wear a mask and whatever, Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be off limits to anybody entering, grocery stores, shopping centers, whatever, if you're not wearing a mask. 2 days a week. That's all we ask. Let's comfort the people who are fearful. The rest of the week, we're going to let businesses be open as normal. Now, what I'm saying is that's just one idea. There are options for people with reasonable minds who don't feel like they have to go out and entrench themselves to be the person that's right about the disease. I think we should just use common sense, and hopefully we'll get to a point where, we either burn this thing out or we have availability of a vaccine for those who wish to take it. And we need to get our businesses back open because we're killing our local cities and counties with the lack of sales tax dollars coming through, not to mention putting a lot of our service providers out of business. I mean, you can see how tough it's been on hairdressers and nail salons and restaurants. And, we're talking small business owners' livelihoods who maybe have worked their whole life to own a small business, and now they see what they've worked so hard for evaporating. It's unfair to say, well, they can't do what they're doing, yet the big corporate giants stay open. So let's find a happy medium. That's where I come from on the COVID issue.
Right. No. Thank you very much, Dr. Ted. We have touched most of the aspects which the Central Valley as well as our district and voters want to listen. So in the end, I would request you to please share some more issues or the topics that you have in mind, you want to share it with the voters, and briefly let the voters know what Mr. Ted stands for, what would be their takeaway from our discussion.
Well, I think, we touched on most of the things I think are really hot button issues. I will tell you, for me, a big part of what spurred me to run is not only, as we talked about earlier, the healthcare story. That's obviously one of the big reasons. But for me, it's all the experience coaching young people, teaching them to work hard, to dedicate themselves to success and achieve. And I see our country kind of drifting away from the American dream. And, I hate to say socialism, but we see people that are starting to believe government should be, responsible for taking care of people's individual needs. And I think our founding fathers built this country on rugged individualism, freedom, self-determination. And I know, again, I little background, I grew up, in not a wealthy family. I had to work for everything I had, and I appreciate it because hard work allowed me to succeed. And I've tried very hard to pass that message on. So I really want to see us have that American dream available to future generations. And a second piece of that is getting our national debt under control, because right now we're mortgaging our children and grandchildren's futures. And we can't continue to print money and borrow it from China. We are going to have to get, let common fiscal sense prevail, prioritize how we're spending money, and we're going to have to protect that dream for the future. So that's kind of the last issue for me that's a big one, is getting our fiscal house in order so our kids have a chance to succeed.
Thank you. And I think this kind of concludes our discussion session with you. Thank you so much for being with us on this platform, and we appreciate your time and energy and your thoughts. And if anything else you would like to at the end add, please go ahead. And otherwise, I would suggest to all the audience, the currently viewing or in the future, they can visit Mr. Ted's page to have any follow-up questions, or they can email them, or they can directly contact them. All the information is available. So Ted, back to you if you want to add anything at the last minute.
Yeah, I would just say, Dr. Ted Howes, I'm running for Congress. I respectfully request you give me your vote, and I will go to Washington, D.C. and work hard for the Valley. If you have any questions, my webpage is tedhowze.com. That's TEDHOWZE, tedhowze.com. My email address is on there. I answer my own emails, ted@tedhowze.com. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, get a hold of me, and we'd certainly appreciate your vote.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ted. We sincerely appreciate you coming here. And to the voters, and then we request you to please reach out for the questions and make an informed decision for November 3rd. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the time.